When you're like 15 and you're choosing a friend versus when you're 25, 35, 55, whatever, you're changing, you're growing, and the conditions change. And so for me, a lot of it was like writing it out. It was tough for me to say it, um, because I realized my voice had been shut down so much, especially in my mid 20s. Some friendships that didn't last, unfortunately. And then others where maybe it had to be kind of like we redid the boundaries a bit so that it was more in alignment with where we both were at. And then
Yeah.
in one particular relationship, we did get much closer because of the honesty. And I
Mm,
think that really changed my perspective on like
I
how to
bet.
deal. That conflict is an opportunity for closeness. I'd never thought of it that way.
Hey there, and welcome to the Reclamation Room. I'm Ashana, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a space for women reclaiming themselves after narcissistic abuse. If you've ever felt like you were too much, not enough, or both at the same time, you're in the right place. I created this podcast because I know what it's like to lose yourself in overgiving, overperforming, and still wondering why it never felt like love. I've walked through trauma, toxic relationships, and the long road of self-reclamation, and I'm here to walk with you. In this podcast, we'll explore what it means to come home to yourself after the confusion and chaos of narcissistic abuse. Some episodes will be solo, others will include guest interviews. All of them will be honest, grounded, and deeply compassionate. So, whether you're just realizing what you've lived through, or you've been on this path and you're ready for the next layer of your healing, you are welcome here. This is not about perfection. This is about reclamation.
My friends, this is my new friend, Maya Nelson. She's amazing. She has an awesome offer for you at the end, so stay tuned if you want to hear more about that. So, if it's okay with you, I would love to give you the mic first and let you introduce yourself. If that feels comfortable for you, it could be past, present, future, however you want to take it. I would love to let you introduce yourself to the listeners first.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for even creating a platform, not only for like yourself and something that's personal to you, but for so many others. It's ever more needed, especially now. I am Maya Nelson. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, mostly in the South here in Florida, but also in Washington. And a lot of my work focuses on immigrants, people of color, queer individuals, women, pretty much a large population that's usually quite marginalized. And especially right now, it feels like they're kind of under attack. A lot of my work has been all over the place, whether it's been in private practice, whether it's been like in agencies or even in disaster relief centers, where I can really see all of these like societal and economic and also medical issues all come together and trying to help people with their mental health while they're dealing with these safety concerns or not even having a home. It's a very different experience, all the way over to being in domestic violence shelters. And it was never just domestic violence. It was always sexual abuse, or sex trafficking was right next door, or there was drug abuse that always came hand in hand. And so seeing these patterns come up again and again, it's eerie in one
Yeah.
way. But as a therapist, it helps me to kind of see, okay, what our society kind of is influencing us with, our families, and then also how we're perceiving ourselves. And so my desire is just to bring more awareness and alignment.
I love everything that you just said, especially it really stands out to me that you're working with individuals who don't necessarily fit the status quo as far as what society honors as the status quo, right?
Mhm.
Like our society is set up a certain way and you can't refute that. You can't deny that. We can go back in history and see that. And the fact that you're bringing more voice to other experiences, like, hey, we need to take more things into consideration here. I'm wondering the way that society has typically been male dominant, white dominant, how have you seen that play out in the people that you've worked with? Like, is there an underlying trauma that they're carrying forward with them, or do you think it builds and like, yeah?
Absolutely. I think it's so weird because before I got into therapy, I learned a lot about like privilege, and
Mm-hmm.
it does show up in therapy. I've noticed with, I love the white males I've worked with, but they can kind of be focused on themselves and their story. And I can notice how privilege can kind of lend itself to self-pity among them than what I would see with other groups.
Yeah.
However, with other groups of people, I noticed how like women would invalidate themselves a lot. And then I could see it on TV when they're like, okay, well, are you sure that this person did this to you? What were you wearing? And you see that play out. Or even with like, in particular with Black women at times, as much as we could connect culturally, there were issues where because they've been disenfranchised a lot or pushed to the side, getting close to them was almost like that little puppy or kitten that's only known outside and they're like, trembling. It's
Yep.
giving that. And so how much harder it is to connect with them. And if you're not understanding of that, it can come off as they're just aggressive or they don't want therapy. And so it definitely shows up all over the place.
Even the fact that you can put words to that experience is so important for people to be hearing this because we feel that. And that's something that, like, gosh, I get this feeling sometimes, right? When I'm connecting with someone and like it almost feels like your brain's going too fast and your heart's going too fast. And it's like, words. Let me put this into words. And when you shared that, like, and I have said that before too, like it almost feels sometimes like it's a feral kitten, like, and I just want to get close to you and I want to love you and I want to help you. And if you're not conscious of that, if you're not able to be aware of that as you're getting closer to this person, you could be pushing them further away. You could be scaring them more. You could be convincing them that mental health professionals are actually a threat, which is a huge responsibility on your shoulders, I'm sure. There's a balance here. And so the fact that you're bringing voice to that and letting people hear, like, hey, I get it. There's a space for you. Everything that you've been through is so valid. There's no shame in how you show up. My job is to be conscious and present with you, whatever that looks like. Oh my gosh, this is so,
And
I
it's
just feel like I could
courageous.
listen to you talk.
You calmed me down just with that last statement there. But you're right, how hard it is to kind of bring it forward. But on the note, too, as kind of being these harbingers of safety, I also think there's a lot of exhaustion. And witnessing that too with some of my clients, especially women who tend to be the helpers, they're the lighthouse keepers, and just seeing them run ragged all the time. I'm kind of wondering, how are some of the ways you've noticed amongst others or even within yourself, how people have kind of kept balance? How do you,
Mhm.
if
Yeah.
that's achievable?
Well, so I know it's achievable. I believe it's achievable. I hold in my heart that like we all have within us our specific answer on how to do that. Because it may look so different for me than it looks for another person. And so when you're saying like, especially as women, we're conditioned to keep that lighthouse going. We have to be the calm in everyone's storm. Who's being the calm in ours? We don't even know how to be the calm in ours because a lot of times we're denying that there's even a storm, right? It's fine. We have to keep going. I have to keep doing this. And so I think what I've seen when I start to see that balance come into play is it's kind of a painful moment. I think it's when women finally start to see, like, oh, shit, there's a storm. And it's almost a moment of like, oh my gosh, wow, yeah, there's a storm, honey. Yeah. And we know it. We go to therapy, we listen to podcasts, right? Like we know there's a storm, but it's almost like we're not allowed to let ourselves admit just how bad or how painful it's been. And then that moment when we admit it, then it's like, now that you know there's a problem, now we can work on the problem. And I hate to call it a problem, but like it is. And we've got to find that balance. And I think it really does start with the vulnerability of saying, I need more. I need something here. And it really does look different for every person. I always say to the women that I work with, if what I'm saying here does not resonate for you, don't do it. Don't do it. But go and write about what came up for you. If I said, and this happens a lot of times, if I say, hey, journal about it, clients will be like, Ashana, you know I'm not going to journal. You know I'm not going to. I don't know why you
You
keep
did
telling me to
say
do
that.
that. And I'm like, okay, well,
Mhm.
how did you feel when I said go journal about it? Were you pissed off because somebody's telling you what to do? Start there. Start there. Were you exhausted because you can't do another fucking thing because there's too much on your plate? Start there. Go think about everything that you're stressed out about and put it all out there and just let it not be inside for a minute. Start there. And I think that's where the balance comes in is when someone says, something hasn't been feeling right here. There is a storm. Enough is enough. Then what? Then you open to possibilities. You've been closed off. So sorry, that was long-winded, but that was such a good question.
beautiful answer too, you know? I love how you kind of remove yourself from the resistance that they're kind of showing. You're kind of just this mirror to be like, hey, the underlying emotion, let's get back to that and expressing that. That is some really good work.
Thank you, friend. So let's see. We were talking about like these patterns that we bring forward with us, right?
Mhm.
And we could say like there's, you know, there's the worldly patterns, there's the cultural patterns, there's the religious patterns. And a lot of times I've seen it like it kind of presses in around you until the person gets smaller and smaller. My question for you, and this could be like purely your philosophy or opinion, these things that we're carrying, they're heavy. We feel small. In your words, why is it do you think that we continue to carry these patterns forward and like they keep manifesting? If we know, we feel it, we feel small, they feel restrictive. Why do you think that we do that? And what do you think an answer might be towards moving forward and changing that?
What a profound question. Well, I think there's multiple things to think about. I think on one level, being a therapist has opened up maybe a part of human condition, something I don't even want to see, which is it seems that humans tend to be most afraid of their inner monster. And it is hard to be like, oh my gosh, you know, that furry weird thing in the corner.
No, thank you.
It could be connected to me. Not that it makes you ugly or anything, but really integrating that shadow, I think it takes immense courage. And I think that's one of the reasons too we struggle with death. I think that uncertainty, all of that is very much connected. Also, I think kind of what I was saying about you being that mirror, you skillfully use that technique to kind of help them look more into themselves. But I think others definitely use their mirror to kind of further kind of control others because they're scared for what may happen if you really liberate oneself, how society may treat you. Um, and then I think lastly, I think people don't have the tools at times. It took me years personally even to know how to have a healthy relationship with somebody. And I'm 31 years old and I'm still not done. I have a
Yeah.
long way to go. But I think back and I'm like, at 21, I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I called myself naive and foolish and all this stuff. So I think that's really the three areas it really comes from. And then maybe last is comfort. Overall, we're in a society of just like consumerism, obviously, and things are pretty nice and easygoing, but I think it also works against us at times.
Yeah, I definitely agree on that one. And you know, this is an area of self-compassion that I try to like remind people of. Like, don't forget, we're in a world where it's easier to numb, it's easier to distract, it's easier to just
Mhm.
scroll. And even myself, I'll message my best friend sometimes and I'll be like, I spent the whole night watching videos on my phone and ask me if I regret it. Ask me if I feel guilty for it. No, I do not. I needed that night. It felt good. I mean, it just sometimes we do need that. And I think that there's got to be a balance there and we can't beat ourselves up over it. And the way that you said we don't have the tools a lot of times. Oh my gosh. Again, let's go back to the people that you find yourself working with. Talk about ill-equipped. Talk about not being given the same tools as other people. What you said right then was so profound and validating, I think, because we do beat ourselves up. That's so important.
Absolutely. I think it makes the monster uglier.
It does. It does. You know, I was interviewing someone recently and he said the answer to everyone's problems, I've got it. I can tell you what it is. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm ready. Please tell me." And he said we're all just convinced that we're the problem and that there's something wrong with us. And he's like, "What if the way that you've been handling things, what if you don't have to make that into some big, dark, ugly thing? What if that's just the way that you've been handling things?" And that's okay because you have the power to handle them differently. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I thought this was going in a different direction, right? Like, we can't just
Mhm.
validate everything and say, it's fine that I'm treating people badly. It's fine that I'm, you know, not being my best self right now. And when he said, you have the power to change how you're showing up, I think that is the big thing here. And when we're talking about how we've been ill-equipped. The monster inside of us is scary. We don't want anyone to see it. And what we're asking for here requires vulnerability, requires courage, requires honesty. I think that knowing that we have the power to show up differently, that's like the secret ingredient, the secret that has been kept from us all along, right? Like,
Mhm.
so I don't know. I don't know. I love this conversation, and I'm wondering if you have one big idea that is your philosophy that you're here to share with everyone, what would you condense it down into
Man, there's so many things. I'm such an overthinker.
and relate?
I guess discovering their path towards peace is essentially what I'm trying to do. Because I feel like ultimately the work that we're doing, as sad as this may sound and kind of cynical, we're going to be in demand for a while, fortunately. The more I read the reports and see everything, or even you just hear about things happening, um, it kind of brings me there. On the note about the monster, I love the way that you brought it together with this the agency component that you had with the other interviewee you were conversing with. That is so true. Confronting our shadow and being able to kind of integrate it into who we are, not seeing it as something that deserves to be exiled. It makes me think of Monster Inc. But all those kids would get scared.
Yeah, and the whole time the
um,
monsters are just like doing their best to make a living, right? Like I'm just trying to get by over here. I need my power turned on.
through and through, you know? I'm
Yeah.
wondering for you then, how did you kind of find your own power and agency? Because you sound like someone who's really done a lot of the work. At least I'm assuming that, right? But what were some of the key things that helped you?
Man, so I will say one big thing for me, and this may not apply to others. I have always been an overthinker, but I've also always been a very deep thinker. And I always felt like if I could just like figure out every angle of something, then I could have a handle on it and I could manage it and I could get through it. And I think a big component for me of growing out of that, I guess, is learning to make mistakes and fail and realize that the sun was still going to shine again the next day. And that the people who I wanted the love from so badly that I was terrified to fail, if I wasn't getting the love from them before when I was performing perfectly, I wasn't missing out on anything if I wasn't getting their love when I failed. So I might as well just fail and figure out my best way to do it because I was unhappy. And finally, it was like, well, if I want to be happy and this hasn't been working, then I'm going to have to try something else. And I think it was that courage to let myself fail, let myself be imperfect, and I think that is what taught me that I do have power in this world. Because when I was in that place of perfectionism and overthinking everything, it was just like constantly reinforcing the powerlessness. I don't have power. I don't have agency. I have to use my brain to get out of these situations. Exhausting, exhausting. And so there was like a certain peace that came in letting myself make mistakes, letting myself, I mean, this even what this looked like in real life could have been I was on like an eating plan or like a detox for my body. And I was
Mhm.
so rigid with it that I was probably doing more harm to my body with the rigidity than I was helping it with the cleanse, letting myself mess up in that. And then wake up the next day and be like, oh my gosh, my body is okay. Like I'm okay. And that is what brought such a sense of agency because it's like, on the one hand, I do have the power to change where I'm at. I do. But I think realizing that had to come with, and my decisions aren't going to be the end of the world. I'm powerful, but I'm not that powerful, like, and I think that came from trying to manage my parents' emotions, trying to make mom happy. That was my whole world. It was the end of the world if she was unhappy. And so I internalized that my decisions were that important. They were everything, life or death. And so agency for me was this balance between I'm not that powerful because the world's not going to end if I make a mistake, but I am really powerful in my own life. And that's going to require me feeling into what makes me happy instead of doing it for other people. So
Wow, let's go.
I didn't realize that until you asked me that question. So thank you.
I, speaking, I almost thought of like levers coming into balance, especially as you're speaking about that you recognize that you're small enough compared to the world, but that you still have agency within your own life. I thought of how liberating that is of a
Yeah.
philosophy. It allows you to still explore without taking on all the burdens.
Oh my gosh, yes. Because we'll take on the burdens. More,
Mhm.
please.
Seriously. But also too, connecting it to your mom and whatever she was kind of going through and kind of the burden that it kind of placed onto you and
Mhm.
recognizing that in that small decision, I think really connects well with what you're talking about overall in your podcast about like these patterns we notice within like these
Mhm.
unhealthy relationships that are imbalanced and how
Yeah.
it lives in us, not just in a big fight, but in the micro decisions we make. And so, yeah, that was really cool. Like kind of hearing
Thank
how you,
you.
you know.
Because we carry those forward with us. Like I'm sure you,
Mhm.
if you want to share, like I'm sure you have something that you carried forward with you that you were like, that's not my best self. Like, have you had a struggle that you've had to overcome even in doing the work that you do?
All the time. You know, I think similarly to you, especially with like my mother and all the things that she had to endure, being the
Hmm.
first child, I'm kind of third parent or second parent in charge.
Yep.
And so very much I internalized a lot of her stress and the frustration. And what that manifested as was being perfect. I remember being 7, which is abnormal. I still do this now. I would like have everything laid out for the next day for school because I didn't want my mom to be stressed out.
Yep.
So underwear, jewelry, all these different things. And now I look back and I'm like, this is a red flag. Like I wish my mom came in there and felt like, hey, calm down a little bit. But you can kind of see even as a kid, I'm still trying to kind of what can I do to kind of help her? And as I got older, definitely I noticed that in other relationships, especially when it came to dating or when it came to friends where I would go the extra mile for them, but then I wouldn't understand. Why aren't they
Hmm.
going that extra mile for me? And so on one end, I'm like, okay, maybe it's me. I'm doing quite a bit here. It is me to an extent. And it's also partially the friend here. And we can talk about that. But I realized, wow, how my trauma from all the way back then is showing up now at 27 at the time and manifesting there. And so a lot of things have had to shift. But I think that's the beauty of therapy or ever like really exploring yourself and examining and being
Yeah.
honest with yourself.
Yeah, we can always shift and grow. And I think that
Mhm.
was a big piece for me because, like, when we're doing what we do, we're meeting people where we're at too. We're not
Yeah.
infallible. We're not, or yeah, I said that right. We're not
You got
perfect. And so, like, I tell people, like, hey, I'm showing up through the lens that I have. I'm learning from you. Every
it.
conversation, we're learning and growing. And as you were talking, it's really interesting. I know that you probably had to have conversations in some of those relationships that were probably uncomfortable, which brings me to how were we raised to handle conflict, right? Like, oh my gosh, that was the end of the world for me too.
You didn't. It was like either you're at least from what I saw growing up, was a lot of fighting and like family grudges and
Yep.
beefs. And it's just like, okay, can we please let this go? But anywho, for me it was very hard because it's not just me, it's also my friends too. And I think even the listeners can connect with this. When you're like 15 and you're choosing a friend versus when you're 25, 35, 55, whatever, you're changing, you're growing, and the conditions change. And so for me, a lot of it was like writing it out. It was tough for me to say it um, because I realized my voice had been shut down so much, especially in my mid 20s. Um, some friendships that didn't last, unfortunately. And then others where maybe it had to be kind of like we redid the boundaries a bit so that it was more in alignment with where we both were at. And then
Yeah,
in one particular relationship, we did get much closer because of the honesty. And I
mm,
think that really changed my perspective on like
I
how to
bet.
deal. That conflict is an opportunity for closeness. I'd never thought of it that way.
Necessary. Like, if you think that we learn, we really do learn from mistakes. Like, there's been studies that have shown this. The child brain learns more from making mistakes so that they know what not to do next time than by getting it always right. So if we extrapolate, it's like, well, then that means that conflict in relationships is actually helping us learn how to grow closer if we're both committed to that and open to it, right? Brand new information. So I'm wondering in your work, and feel free to like veer me off if this is touching too close on anything. I'm wondering if you've had clients who did not have their ideal conflict resolution growing up, right? Like they're afraid, they're maybe like I'm not going there, this is too much. Have you been able to kind of be that model for them and show them even in sessions like, hey, conflict can be a good thing. Let's dig into this.
Absolutely. I think that's been an Achilles heel, to be quite honest with you, for me.
Wow.
On certain levels, it has been, I have been able to work with them, especially if I feel like our personalities are agreeable or if I've worked with them for a while. But especially for clients where it's been a month or even 3 months or less, and they're coming in hot and heavy. And if I'm going through something, it can be very triggering. And
Yeah.
I found myself at certain times where I'm kind of like, hey, we either have to stop or I'm kind of, I'm not as in the session as I could be because in the back of my mind, it's like, let's tame it, let's get it back to stable. And so I think along with clients, I've had to learn and grow in that way
Yeah.
ever more. And I think that's the coolest thing about working with people is you start to realize after a while that they're bringing you the gems.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm excited for people to hear this interview specifically because
Mhm.
it's like this is as real as it gets, you know, we and I speak we, I'm going to speak for you too, correct me if I'm wrong, but like we hold in our hearts a story for humanity that like is so beautiful and is so endearing and heartwarming. And yet we also have to hold that more pessimistic side of like, can we do it? That's really difficult. We have a lot to overcome here, including us. We're a part of that too. So I think it's important that people hear that.
Seriously, that we're like, I'll sometimes go onto like Reddit and there's like therapist abuse is one of them.
Oh
And
no.
I know it's intense, but like I've taken a gander and usually because of other clients. Anywho, so I see
I love Reddit. I'm here for it.
so messy on there. But a lot of them were like, oh, my therapist is, they didn't show up to a session. And it's valid. A lot of what they're
Yeah.
saying is like, this is out of control.
Yeah.
But I wish they could see on the other side with therapy how much therapists are really combating like what humanity is and their own humility in the work.
Yeah.
It is
Oh
such a
my God.
hard balance and tug. And I don't think they always understand you're still a human reacting, but you still want people to be better and that we fail at
Mhm.
times. That doesn't
Mhm.
mean that the relationship is a failure. I think it kind of connects to what you were saying about conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, like we're doing it in real time. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it is that we get to show people that it can be messy too. It doesn't have to be perfect. I had this really interesting assignment for school recently, and we were talking about how boundaries and generosity are two sides of the same coin. Like one can't come without the other. And I thought that was really interesting because, like, we wouldn't normally say that, but when we look at it in terms of the work that we do, we are being generous with our time. We're being generous with our ability to hold space, our compassion, like we're giving. And we have to have boundaries in place of I've reached my limit. I don't want to hit burnout. I have to have like self-care boundaries in place for myself. So one really can't exist in a healthy way without the other if you look at it that way. And I thought that was interesting. So I'm wondering for you, do you have like favorite self-care tips that maybe you do yourself or that you share with your clients?
Definitely boxing helps a lot.
I think you were going to say that. So cool.
That gets a lot of my rage addressed. But this is something that's been hard for me, honestly. And please help me if you can. And the listeners too, comment whatever you can do. Because yes, I do the yoga, I do the meditating, I exercise, I'm always in nature, all of it.
Yeah.
However, it's hard for me when I hear something wild, even though I'll talk to friends and colleagues, it still lives with me. And when I see something in a movie, certain clients' stories can come back up, or
Yeah.
even when I'm talking to other people. And I find it hard to kind of maintain those internal boundaries when it comes
Uh-huh.
to their stories. I'm still
Uh-huh.
struggling a bit. And it's been years of me being into this. And so when I hear people say they can almost shut it off, I envy them deeply. I'm like, how do
Yeah.
you do this? Because it
Interesting.
lives with me a bit. I almost liken it, although people's emotions are not garbage at all, to a
Mm-hmm.
garbage man. How do you
Mm.
go to your job and not smell like it when you come back home? And I
Yeah.
feel like you have to be very meticulous or just accept the fact that you are going to carry some of it.
Yeah. You know, for me, this is interesting to me because I'm curious if when the stories come back up for you and like you remember clients' things, is it Is it getting in the way of your life? Is it bothering you that that's happening because it's like preventing your happiness, preventing your grounding, preventing your closure?
At times, yes.
Yeah.
I tell people empathy has a cost
Yeah.
for free. What you're paying for money does not compare to what therapists
Mm-hmm.
are giving up emotionally. I've
Mm-hmm.
heard about people going through horrible things, and this is before therapy.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that I can ground myself pretty quickly. I can handle myself. But to
Mm-hmm.
say it doesn't bother me, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because it brings up the question like where is the line? You know, like in speaking for myself here, I love everyone. I do. I mean, once I know you, I love you. You're great. You're awesome. And so where is the line between holding compassionate love for another human and carrying that forward with you and not being able to let go of it? I hope that we do get some feedback on this because, on the one hand, it's like who did love those people, right? Like, I don't want to give it up completely because it's an honor to say like you went through something really bad, my friend, and I'll never forget that for you. Like I'm here with you in it. And there comes the boundaries that come with the generosity. I've got to have my life. I've got to. So this is, I wish I had an answer here. I do. I do.
Currently, I've taken like a month's break. I had to totally stop. I was pretty burnt out. And
Oh,
now I feel back to myself. And again, I think that's kind of the cost of the business we do. Firefighter is probably going to have some physical injuries over time.
yeah.
Doctors who work in the ER, they talk about the stuff that they see and not being able to sleep at time, and nurses. So I think that's kind of the beauty in the work that we do, the sacrifice that I don't think is always understood, partially
Hmm.
because it's women based. And I think patriarchy kind of diminishes it. And
Yep.
also because I think people don't understand how deeply they're not feeling
Mm.
every day, that they're just in this autobot. It's not until they're in therapy often or in other spaces
Yep.
that I get that feedback like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could be this happy. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's why sociopaths' emotional range is here versus,
Yep.
but
I think one thing that helps is when we do have conversations with people who get it. Because it's like, and even with clients, like, I don't always have the answers, man. Like, I know you're coming here looking for answers, and yet there might not be one for this yet. Now, there may be for you, may be walking down the street and the answer might come to you. But right now, I can be with you and I can say that I get it. And I think that's kind of magical for humanity because at least knowing that you're not alone in it. I don't know. I don't know. Some people might say I'm a softie, but I'm
oh,
connection is
what?
everything to me.
Seriously. And that's what I think someone would want to hear from the
Yeah.
person next to them, that it does bother them as much as it bothers them themselves. You know, that you're feeling what I'm feeling. And I think that's the beauty of that work, that deep
Hmm.
vulnerability, that deep thinking you were talking about, it
Yep.
leads to deep connection. And I think that is rare and ever necessary.
Little did we know, right? When we were picking out our clothes and so did you always think that you would be doing this work or did it kind of, how did you get into it?
I think, well, I used to be talking about mess on Reddit. I liked mess too when I was on the playground. So my friends and my sister would get into like altercations. So I was always the peacemaker, which wasn't always great. But I think therapy always aligned from since I was a kid. People were like, you should do this. And I
Yeah.
always internalized it and I enjoy it. But for you, was that kind of the same or did it take like different experiences?
It was the same for me. So I always knew that that's kind of what I wanted to do and was
Mhm.
doing from a very young age. But I tried really hard to be other things for a long time. I did. I tried to be very like cold, calculated, clinical, like medical field, like cutting into people like cold and clinical. And I finally realized like that's just not me. That's what I thought my mom wanted. That's what I thought my dad wanted. I hated it. It was awful. And so here I am embracing all the warmest parts of me and learning the balance of the boundaries and the generosity and the you have to be detached sometimes, but we can still do it in a tactful and compassionate way. So it's a process.
It is, you know, learning to find it. But that's really cool that you listen to yourself.
It took a long time. A long time. I think I was like 27 when I finally was like, oh no, I don't know anything and this is not me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, our brains aren't there till 25.
Yeah, I wasn't too far behind. Only a couple of years of just fucking everything up royally, but it's fine. We learn. We learn from failure.
Absolutely, I feel like I've had a litany of failures that have led me here, but I'm grateful, they kind of built my successes, I feel, especially with like clients and different people. I'm kind of wondering when people do connect with you about like their experiences with abusive relationships and having a lot of that internalized sense of like, I could have done more. Why did I listen to this person? How are some of the ways that you kind of reframe it for them or help them to kind of see the light and what really happened versus the trauma narrative?
So we do this thing called zoom out and zoom in, very elementary. Literally, that's what we do in that moment. So sometimes this could look like plotting it on a line, whether that's on paper or like, okay, we're here, be where you are, picture the line in front of you and the line behind you, put yourself on that line. And so I bring in a lot of imagery like colors and textures and what's swirling behind you, right? Like, what did that feel like for you? Now, where are you? What is within you? What did you bring forward with you? We're zooming out to see like everything that brought you here instead of I'm right here and this sucks and this is scary and I can't trust anyone again and I'm so stupid. No, it's like zoom out. Look at everything that you're carrying. That's heavy. That's coloring everything that you see in front of you. That's become your tunnel vision, your lens of viewing the world. So now let's zoom out a little bit more. Okay, there's a future. We forget that a lot of times with trauma. It's like there's no hope for the future. A moment can stretch on for hours and we kind of get lost in it. Like time gets messed up a lot of times. And so what colors do you want to bring forward with you into the future? What do you want that future to feel like, to look like, to imagine yourself there, view it? Who is there? What does your day look like? And then we zoom back in and it's like, here's where you are. Okay. Now you know what you're bringing with you. Now you know what you want that to look like. Let everything else go. And I'll literally like relax every muscle in your body. Just breathe. A lot of times they don't do that in their day-to-day life. They're like, oh, wow, like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. Yes, it does. What is your next step to go forward into that future to feel a little bit more that way? And I find that like setting things down and having that like nervous system reset for a second opens up possibilities in your brain that weren't there before. And then they know the next step, they know the next answer. And if it's not right for them, they come back and it's like, well, what did you learn? How's that going to color it moving forward? Like, so it's very visual for me, but it's also very like we feel it. We bring in like, are you smelling anything? Are there any songs that are coming up for you? And I think what we're doing, and don't quote me on this, but I think I'm helping them kind of process some of the baggage that they didn't realize they were holding on to and helping them realize in real time, it's okay. You can bring that with you if you want. It doesn't have to be so scary. You can bring it with you. Like it's kind of like an empowerment process of what next thing do you want to do? What feels good for you? Stop looking at it in terms of right and wrong. We're not going to assign labels on things. That's what got you here. People told you that wasn't good. We don't want that. So it's kind of like a weird approach, I think, but it's how I've always done it. So again, I went from the cold and calculated to I'm just gonna do what feels good, and if it helps people, awesome. If not, what did I learn? What can I do?
Also, that was so calming as you're saying it. I am somewhat familiar with the technique, but the words that you use, also, I think some of it is more natural too, though. I think
Yeah.
you should consider ASMR like meditative tapes and like stuff. I think it
Thank
would be
you.
very calming, though, overall. I love how you really decenter them and not in the worst ways, just to make them see that there's more going on in the world.
Yeah.
And there's other things that are weighing them down that it's really just in this moment. But it's really interesting how much trauma can pull you into its past and kind of keep you trapped there. I'm wondering, forgive me if I'm asking too many
No, you're
questions.
good. You're good. I feel like I should be asking more questions of you.
When it comes to like their trauma narrative or even them recognizing them being in it, how do they
Mhm.
kind of respond once they are back in their calm state? Do you point it
Mm.
out to them? Like, did you notice that shift or?
A lot of times in the moment, they will be asking me questions of like, I feel this right now. Is this okay? So I'm like, do you want to be feeling that right now? Does it feel okay to you? So a lot of how I do it is asking them questions, showing them that they're self-aware. Now be aware of the self-awareness. They already have that, right? And so usually by that point, we have enough of a rapport that, and I hate to like categorize this, but like they're looking to me to tell them the right way to do things. That's just how it happens a lot of the time. And so I will say, like, did you notice this or that? Or sometimes it's even when we were talking, it really felt like I was talking to like a very like innocent part of you. Like you seemed so passionate about something right then. Was there a time that you were really into like singing and things like that? Like that was so cool the way that you shared that with me. And so I kind of dive into the like the inner child work, like there's different parts of you. There's, like, but I try not to label it. I try not to put emotions into their mouth, and it happens very naturally. And I find over time that it helps build a longer term relationship together versus the way that people generally look at a session is I'm going to come into the session and the problems are going to be solved. I came in here with this problem and I'm going to get these answers. And so I think I'm kind of opening the way that we see this kind of work in terms of this is a relationship and it's for now it's a relationship with me, but in working together, you're going to learn how to have that with yourself. I promise. Be here with me and you're going to do this
Yeah.
yourself and it'll be the rest of your life and it's going to be magical. So I don't know. Again, it might be kind of weird to some people, but I'm like, I just do it. I just do it, man. I don't know. It feels.
Well, it sounds like you're helping them to see their own agency by helping them to assess their emotions more. And it
Mm,
seems like too,
mm,
any emotions that were dulled by trauma, you're helping them to take control
mhm,
gently. I
mhm.
like that you have that non-directive approach. However, I do wonder when people are maybe close to danger, whether
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
like their partner is very concerning, or
Yeah.
maybe they're doing certain things, or there's children involved. I know outside of like CPS and all that stuff,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how do you address when they're kind of close to the fire? Or do
Mm.
you?
This is the part that has been the most uncomfortable for me because sometimes I have to be direct. Sometimes I have to be that voice of reason that's like, I'll be super honest with you, friend. If that was happening to me, I wouldn't be there for that. That is abuse. And I'm not trying to tell you anything about your partner. I don't know them. I'm not judging them. I don't care about them any less as a person. But what you just shared with me is concerning. And so there have been times that I've had to say, okay, maybe this needs some outside help. This is beyond my scope. And here's what we need to do here. And like you said before, Achilles heel a little bit because it's like when it gets to that point, there have been times that I've wondered if I'm too blunt and too aggressive, is it going to undo all the work that we've done? Are they going to be scared now? Like, and I've found that it generally hasn't. It generally is more helpful in terms of like, at least someone is protective of me, even in the moments when I wasn't, you know? And I've had to say that too. Like, you've got to have that protective capacity for yourself. You've got to look at what's actually happening here. And that's more uncomfortable for me being more direct in that way because I can't be like, do you think this person is abusing you right now? If they are and the person is not seeing it, I will be the person to say it. My friend, that's abusive. I'm really sorry to be the one to point that out to you, but if I were in that situation as me now, I've learned boundaries have to go up. Are you prepared for that? Do you want to keep being in this situation or do you want it to look different? How can I help you? Let's move forward, but I don't want to see you in this. I care about you very much. So, how would you handle that situation?
Exactly the same.
Yeah, okay. That's good to hear. It's really
Oh,
uncomfortable for me, so.
I was somewhat trying to be a little playful, but anywho, genuinely, no, seriously, the way that you handled it, I thought was really, really mature. And I do think there has to be that balance there. And you show it here very well. I think for many of your clients, as long as they're kind of connected to themselves and they're listening and they're willing, it sounds like
Yeah.
you give them a lot of free terrain to learn and to explore. I almost think of like Montessori school kind of
Yeah.
approach versus just on top of them. But for myself, there's been times where I have not said things because I kind of was like, should I say something about this partner?
Yeah.
Not so much when it came to like deep abuse, but things like, is this person telling the truth? Are there some inconsistencies here? And people have asked me plainly, like,
Yeah.
hey, what do you think? And sometimes I've allowed them to kind of make their choice, and that hasn't always worked out the best because they'll come back and be like, I wish you would have just told me.
Yeah.
However, more often than not, they find their way. And also, they tend to have other people too who are going to say something, not to take the pressure off of me. But as I've learned, I've kind of taken more of your approach where I'm kind of like, hey, this, we definitely have to look at it. We cannot ignore it. However, it's led to another problem where like defensiveness can show up and, people
Yeah.
start to become more avoidant. So it's this ever
Yeah.
balancing act.
Yeah. I mean, we bring our personality trait into our job with us, right? Like we have to. We are who we are. We can't. I believe that in this work we can't be cold and calculated. We have to bring who we are, which is ever growing, ever evolving. Well, okay. Oh my gosh, how has it already been as long as it's been? I feel like I could just talk to you forever.
I'm happy
Um,
to hear it. It was
yeah.
very, very easy for us to kind of go through this.
Yeah.
Pretty happy.
Yeah. So is there anything that you have in terms of like an offering right now or something that you would like to invite people to chat more or
Absolutely. I have a support group that is totally for free for people of color, queer individuals, immigrants. It's on Meetup. You can find it as on silentpsychetherapy.com. There's a link over to it without the P, mind you, Silent Psyche. And you just sign up. And I just have to kind of get some of your baseline information for like the screening and so on. But after that, people join. It's max 10 to 15 people, depending my capacity. It's bi-weekly on Thursdays. So anybody who's willing, 100% within those categories. And then on silentpsychetherapy.com, there's like blogs and all different stuff that I'm up to if you want to take a gander. And so, yeah.
so I love that you do a free call or a free get together. That's amazing. I think personally, I think more people should do that. Like that's the way to go. So I'm going to have your links in the show notes. And I just want to say, just to you personally, like the way that this conversation has unfolded, I feel like sitting in a session with you would be the most natural and heartwarming and inviting place on earth. So I hope people can find you through this and come to your meetup and get to know you because you're incredible. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.
I truly appreciate it. And same with you. You're very calming. I can feel it virtually. So I can imagine in person and everything. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
I've loved our conversation. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. It was awesome.
Thanks for spending time in the Reclamation Room. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if this supported you, consider sharing it or leaving a review. You're not alone, and your reclamation is sacred.